We are reading from the Yoga Sutras. This is our Yoga Sutra class number 24. We are studying the second chapter and we are at aphorism number 16. Last time, in our last class, we have learned that sufferings are caused by three types of pains: past, present and future. But as we have already discussed, we cannot change the past stock of our karmas. We have to either just suffer from the past actions or suffer from the hardships involved in doing something to reduce them. On the other hand, we have already started with the actions in the present. That is the reason why we call them actions. Actions means that have begun. Hence, we have only three choices about the present actions. We may continue to do them or leave them in between or do them in a different manner. In Sanskrit it is called kartum, akartum, anyatha va kartum sakyate. Kartum, you can do it, you may do it, you can stop doing it, or you can do it in a different way. These also involve stress and in a sense suffering. Then what about the future actions, creating future samskaras, future loads of our karmas? Yes, that is the thing Patanjali wants us to be very serious about. This most serious topic is being very elaborately analyzed and clarified in the next few aphorisms, from aphorism number 16 till the aphorism number 25 in this chapter. So let us read the aphorism number 16. Heyam dukkham anagatam. It is worthwhile to avoid the misery which has not yet come in the course of our journey. In other words, it is better not to embrace, not to welcome, not to try with or experiment with the miseries that have not yet come. That means it is not advisable to experiment with or even not to have any curiosity about those future sufferings or their causes. Now a big question is how to avoid the curiosity about just checking, just for once, how does it taste or feel? We want to just check once with the future miseries or their causes. The answer lies in our remaining satisfied with what we have. We keep ourselves engaged with the current life and its problems, and being careful not to invite further sufferings. We have been told already that desires cannot be fulfilled with enjoyments. Why? We know the answer. Just to recall what we have learnt last time. Once you engage yourself into getting your desire satisfied, at least once, it creates more desire for getting the same experience of satisfaction. There are three causes for this ever-growing dissatisfaction born out of satisfying our desires. See, the fallacy lies here. The more you satisfy your desire, the more dissatisfied you become. So these three causes, they are: number one, the satisfaction derived by each enjoyment may not increase. That is why you get the same or less satisfaction each time when you have the same kind of enjoyment. Number 2, the craving, longing to enjoy, or the thirst for enjoyment will increase progressively after each satisfaction. The thirst increases. And number 3, the sense organs that are used to satisfy the same type of desire or urge become more efficient and would force you to enjoy. Hence it is advised in this aphorism that we should learn not to be even curious about testing with desires that would bring us future troubles. Well, this is easier said than done, because we don't know the details of pain-bearing obstacles and their nature yet. Yes, that is the reason why the great sage Patanjali would spend time with the matter in the next 10 aphorisms. Swami Vivekananda says, "It is only that which is waiting to bear fruit in the future that we can conquer and control, towards which end all our forces should be directed." This is what Patanjali means when he says that samskaras are to be controlled by resolving them into their causal state. We know, or we have learned, that the sufferings are products of avidya, ignorance. Let the future remain in avidya, untapped and unexplored. We should avoid it in this life itself. The next aphorism is a further elaboration on the second klesha or pain-bearing obstacle called asmita. You may remember that the Yoga Sutras defined asmita or ego as one which is a product of the combination of two powers. The power of the real witness, the Atman or Purusha, and the power of the darshana, means or instruments of our enjoyment. They said Drik Darshana Shaktyoho in the Yoga Sutras, that Drik Darshana Shaktyoho. Drik means the seer and Darshana means seeing, the act of seeing, and its means, whatever is there together with it. In the next aphorism, the Yoga Sutras elaborates on the Samyoga. See, we read it earlier that it is Ekatmata. Drik Darshana Shaktyoho Ekatmata Asmita, that is ego. Now let us observe here that this Samyoga is the next word they are using, or connection between the same power of the witness, means the seer, and the power of the objects now, the seen. Earlier the connection was between the subject and the means. Then we called it Ekatmata. Here the connection is between the subject and the object, and that is why it is given a different name, Samyogaha. Samyoga means connection or junction. This point has been elaborately discussed in the Vedantic treatise, very famous it is, Drik Drishya Vivekaha. This is the discernment between the seer and the seen. Of course, from a Vedantic standpoint, Drik Drishya Viveka is a Vedantic treatise. Here we are engaged in discussing the Yoga Sutras. So Yoga Sutra mentions almost the same idea with two different words. When you connect the subject with the means, like the seer and the act of seeing, then it is called ekatmata asmita. Asmita means ego, I consciousness. And when you connect the seer with the object, means seen, then it is called samyogaha. The approach of the Yoga Sutras is being further elaborated on in the next aphorism. Drashtri drishyayoho sanyogo heya hetuhu. Earlier we have learned that heyam dukkham anagatam. Anagatam, that has not yet come. Dukkham, that suffering, has to be avoided. Heyam. Then here we are learning Drashti drishyayo sanyogaha heya hetu. What is the cause of this avoidance? Avoiding. Now, that is the connection between the seer and the seen. Not the act of seeing. Seer and the seen. Drik drishya. The cause of that suffering which is to be avoided is the junction of the seer and the seen. This is the meaning of this aphorism. Aphorism number 17. The seer and the seen, these two have to be clearly understood. It is not possible to know the seer. When you are discussing this matter at this level, then you don't know who the seer really is. So therefore it is not possible to know the seer at this moment. If we can know it, then it is reduced to an object. At this moment, if I can know the seer, then the seer becomes my object. It never remains the subject. But seer is always the subject. The word itself means it is a subject. So the seer pulsates in and through the intellect, buddhi. What is the seen or object of the intellect? The dharma or qualities of the objects, which are able to embark on or place themselves on the intellect, are the objects. This idea we need to understand, analyze and understand. Dharma, the qualities. The qualities of the objects are the shape, size, name and utility value. This we have learnt earlier. These are the qualities or attributes of the objects, characteristics of the object. Like when we know the sugar, then only the dharma, like the name, form, the value of the sugar is lodged in the intellect. You cannot lodge a grain of sugar into your intellect. That is very physical crystal. Not possible. So what is lodged in your intellect? That is the dharma, the quality. Because you cannot put a physical sugar crystal on your intellect. Now by further analysis, we know that the seer or the drashta or drashtri is available through the intellect because it pulsates, manifests itself through the intellect. And the dharmas of the objects, means seen, are also available in the intellect as we have seen, because the qualities of the sugar is there already in the intellect on which this seer or the drashta is manifesting. Hence the intellect is the bridge between the seer and the seen. Once again, the seer is available through the intellect, and the dharmas of the objects are also available in the intellect. Hence, the intellect is the bridge or junction between the seer and the seen. Just think of any palatable thing, anything that you like to eat. Keep your eyes closed, think of that, your tongue will start watering. The effect will be physical, though you are thinking mentally. So, the taste of that thing which you like to eat is lodged on your intellect. It is there in your mind. even though the crystal sugar is not there. So therefore, drik drishyaha. Drik means the seer is available through the intellect on which these impressions of the objects are lodged. The junction is where? In the intellect. That the intellect is the junction. Well, who is the seer? The self of man, the Purusha, that is the seer. What is the seen? The whole of nature, beginning with the mind down to gross matter. All pleasure and pain arise from the junction between this Purusha and the mind. The Purusha, you must remember, according to this philosophy, is pure. When joined to nature, it appears to feel pleasure or pain by reflection. The drishya or the objects are independent entities. They are not part of the seer, neither part of the mind or intellect, the means of seeing. These objects can remain independent as long as they are not being connected with the drashta or the seer. Why does this connection happen? It happens due to the need of the seer. That means this need does not belong to the seen objects. That is, the need is not the need of the object itself. The object does not need you, does not invite you. So we know that there is a purpose of the Purusha to get connected with the drishya or the objects. This purpose can be fulfilled. Then this purpose can create misery also. That is why it is called the cause of suffering. Cause of suffering. This purpose is the cause of suffering. Samyoga. Samyoga means a connection between the seer and the seen that creates this purpose and that creates the suffering. That means the samyoga connection between the powers of both the seer, the power of the seer and the power of the seen, could be the cause of suffering, the connection. They use an illustration to explain this point. Suppose you are going to walk in a forest. There are thorns, stone with sharp edges, etc. in the forest. Your plan to go for a walk is an act that has not yet started. Anagatam. Heyam dukkham anagatam. Anagatam, it has not yet started. It has not yet come. Hence, it is something that can be done in the future or avoided now. This is anagatam dukkham, means this suffering that has not yet come can be done in the future or can be avoided now itself. So what do you do? It seems so natural or taken for granted that we do not analyze this whole process. Well, what we do is we put on a pair of shoes. Now let us analyze. Number one, in the first place, the feet are there. Suppose they are called or compared with the drik, the subject. Subject there, the feet have to walk. Number two, the thorns are also there, which are called the drishya, the objects. These are the two truths. And there is, number three, there is a chance for the thorns, the objects, to come in contact with and then get into your feet. What will you do? So number four provides the answer. You put on a pair of shoes that is meant for such purpose. That is, for the purpose of avoiding the thorns that are yet to come. The thorns are here, avoidable objects. You do not go on removing the thorns on each step that you take and then walk just step by step. So the use of the shoes is called hetuhu, the cause, which is used for avoiding the thorns, the objects. This cause, that is the shoes, do two things together. Number one, it does not allow the thorns to get into the feet, and at the same time, it allows the thorns to remain at their place without affecting the feet. The shoes insulate you or protect you from the thorns, and the thorns remain at their place waiting for those who would unwisely dare to walk barefoot. Similar is the case with our suffering coming from the future actions. We can avoid suffering by using such insulations. But the yogi has to understand this process of creating the protecting shield or armor clearly. Well, let us ask a relevant question. What is this samyoga or contact or junction between the seer and the seen? The answer is to be investigated in detail. This is one of the most important mysteries or puzzles in all philosophies or psychologies. There is not much difference between the explanations given by the yoga and Vedanta on the idea of samyoga or junction. Of course, this is not the place for such complicated technical discussion. Comparing the points dealt with by Vedanta and also by the Yoga Sutras. I am not going to do that. I will just refer to one subtle point of difference for those who would like to study it in depth. In short, the difference lies in the definition or explanation of the word mithya-jnanam. You may remember that we will come to that this has been used by both Yoga Sutras and Vedanta. Shankaracharya uses this word mithya-jnanam in his introductory commentary to the Brahma Sutras, that is the voluminous pillar of the Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta. Mithya-jnanam means wrong knowledge, in simple words, mistake. The same word has been used by Patanjali here in the first chapter. If you remember, he calls it viparjayaha. Viparjaya means what? Mithya-jnanam atadrupa pratishtham. Mithya-jnanam means what? Atadrupa. Tadrupa, it is not of that nature of the truth. Then it is untrue, mistake. The samyoga or the junction between the two, the Purusha or the self and the Prakriti or the not self, is absurd or impossible. One is conscious and another is inert matter. But due to the mithya-jnanam or mistake, this impossible has become possible. Now Vedanta says that the mistake cannot be defined, hence it is anirvachaniyam, inexplicable, cannot be explained. It is Maya. But Yoga says, Vedanta said it cannot be explained, that is why it is called anirvachaniya, it is Maya. Yoga says that this mistake can be explained. Vedanta says it cannot be explained. Yoga says it can be explained. Why? The plain and simple difference is that non-dual Vedanta talks of non-duality. Yoga talks of duality. So Yoga says that this mistake can be explained. It can be explained not as ignorance, but the real thing. Not as ignorance about the real thing, that is what is called Maya or mistake, but as knowledge of an unreal object. Knowledge of an unreal object. That is why it can be known. Vedanta says it is unreal. It is an ignorance about a real thing. Yoga says it is a knowledge of an unreal thing. See, just the words differ. The placements of the words, the syntax differ. But the meaning remains the same. Let me repeat. Vedanta says that this mistake or viparjaya cannot be defined, hence it is called anirvachaniya. Yoga says that this mistake can be explained because it is an ignorance about a real thing. It is a knowledge of an unreal object. Yes, it is a knowledge of an unreal object. Vedanta says ignorance of a real thing. It says knowledge of an unreal thing. So once again, let me clarify. The difference lies in the ignorance about the real thing and the knowledge of the unreal object. More can be found in the books. We have already learnt just a little while ago, that is aphorism number 6 in this chapter itself, that asmita or ego or the I consciousness is the identification or junction, connection of the powers of both the seer, Drik Shakti, power of the seer, and Darshana Shakti, power of the act of seeing. Drik Darshana Shaktyoho Ekatmata Asmita, it said. This matter and its proper understanding are an important thing in making out the head and tail of how erroneously our mind comes to conclusions. We need to place a few ideas in proper perspective. Now once again, I would beg your pardon for leading you into the maze of complicated concepts. But as usual, I will try my very best to present the ideas as clearly as possible without compromising the content. Well, I have spent almost 5 days working on this, how to present these complicated ideas in simpler terms. I hope my expectation would be true. Now let us recapitulate some ideas about asmita or ego as discussed under aphorism number 8 of the second chapter. That was on 7th March 2021, and it was in the class Yoga Sutra class number 20. You can go back to the YouTube and find them. Yoga Sutra class number 20. We have studied under aphorism number 2.6 that Drik Darshana Shaktyoho Ekatmata Asmita, that I have said now. Egoism is something which is produced by the identification of the power of the seer with the power of the instrument of seeing. Let us recapitulate the idea of Triputi, the 3 participants in respect of each set of our experience. Number 1, Drik means the subject, the seer. Number 2, second participant, Darshana is the instrument, the act of seeing, the means. And Drishya, number 3, is the objects that are seen. The first two, that is the subject and the instrument, are considered in aphorism number 2.6, Drik Darshana Shaktyoho. Then the word Shaktyoho means of the powers of both. Ekatmata means being one, as it were. This Ekatmata is called Asmita or I consciousness. The whole meaning is when the two powers, the powers of both the seer and the instrument of seeing, appear to be one single phenomenon. That is called Asmita, I consciousness or ego. In the aphorism number 2.6, Patanjali has left out one word which is called Drishya, the seen objects. That is the last word in the Triputi for the act of seeing. Apparently that is not included in this ekatmata, apparently, oneness here. Clear? Hence finally we have two entities to consider, asmita or I consciousness and drishya. Because we have seen that drik and darshana, they have combined themselves into asmita, created the ego, and now that ego is now acting on the drishya, the third of the Triputi, the seen, the objects of seeing. Clear? Let us consider the event of seeing something. I think that I am seeing the objects. Who is this I? It is actually the asmita or ego or I consciousness, which is seeing. It is a compound. It is not the seer. Please remember this. Once again, what is this asmita? It is a mixture, a compound of both the powers of the seer, real seer, and the act of seeing. It is darshana, not drishya. Please remember. Darshana means the intellect, not drishya, the object. Drik and darshana are not taking part in the actions, but their combined powers created an agent called the asmita or ego, which is the actor. Clear? In this present aphorism that we have started to discuss, that is the aphorism number 2.16, the book says, Drashtri Drishyayoho Samyogaha Heya Hetuhu. The meaning is, the cause of the suffering which is to be avoided is the samyoga, the junction of the seer and the seen. Who is the seer here? The earlier word was ekatmata, identification. In this aphorism, the word is samyoga, junction. Now the big question is, how to connect these two ideas or events, ekatmata and samyogaha. Ekatmata or identification is between the first and the second of the Triputi, and therefore in the event of seeing, the three are participating together. But samyoga is that, where all the three are participating. Junction is between, in samyoga, the junction is between the first and the third of the three. There it is the first and the second, here it is the first and the third. Clear? That means, by extension, samyoga or junction is also a connection between the asmita and the objects, drishya. Asmita means the first one, ekatmata, the first one which is called ekatmata, plus the second one is samyoga. Hence we can say that samyoga or junction means, in a sense, all the three of the Triputi. Clear? We have got all of them here. Yes, clear. But we need more elaboration. Let us go step by step. We will consider the act or the event of seeing. There are varieties of acts, the event of enjoying, the event of jumping, the event of so many things if you can consider. But here we are considering the event of seeing because the words are used like that. Drik or drashtri means the subject which is able to cognize, to see. Darshana means to see, the act of seeing. And drishya means the things which can be seen, objects. So therefore we are now considering this phenomenon of seeing. Now asmita or I consciousness or ego is a compound, we have seen. It is a compound of what? Of both the powers. The power of the seer and the power of the act of seeing. The power of the seer is in the form of consciousness, chidrupaha. The power of the seer is in the form of consciousness. The power of the seeing is the form of knowing, jnanarupa, it can be known. Now let us remember that we are talking about the worldly experiences of an individual. Hence, like the seer and seeing mix up, there are other types of mixing up. Like suppose in the case of enjoying bhogaha. In this event, the Triputi will be the enjoyer, the instrument of enjoyments and the objects of enjoyment. Then the ekatmata, not samyoga, will be between the powers, the power of the enjoyer and the power of the instruments of enjoyment. But the combination ekatmata that is fine for the act of seeing is not needed in the act of enjoying. This we explained earlier. Seeing and enjoying, these two things are different. We will see it. It should happen between the power of the things of enjoyment and the power of the enjoyer. This is a very subtle point. Let me explain it once again. We have seen that the two powers get mixed up and create the sense of ego, I consciousness. Then with the ego that I am seeing, we proceed to see things or objects called the drishya or seen. See? It is not only the seer, but it is connected with the ability to see that proceeds to see the object. Clear? When we have the ability and wish, requirement, necessity, need, then we proceed to see something. So therefore, the seer is now connected with the power and ability and desire of seeing. Okay? So, these two things are connected. Now we proceed to see things. Here the asmita is I am seeing. I is different from seeing. But they are now connected. Seeing belongs to the eyes and the sense organ called the eyes or seeing ability. So therefore, the asmita is a combination of the power of the seer eye and the power of seeing capability. Clear? Actually, between these two, one cannot appear without another. This power of seeing and the power of the seer, they cannot appear without each other. Without buddhi, the power of seeing, the purusha, the power of the seer, cannot manifest. And without purusha, buddhi cannot stand and work. Hence, when there is a scope for the act of enjoyment, then the power of purusha has to act through the power of buddhi. Right? We were talking about the power of seeing, where we have seen that the seer, the subject acts through the means or instrument, buddhi. And now when we are considering the act of enjoyment, that is our thing that we are going to discuss, because heyam dukkham anagatam, dukkham, suffering created by the desire to enjoy. So bhoga. So therefore, in the case of our scope of the act of enjoying, so what we consider? We consider the power of purusha that should act through the power of the intellect. They have to combine first. In this act, that is in the act of enjoying, the mix-up happens not between two. This is the difference. It happens between all the three of the triputis. How? Because the objects of the enjoyments give you pleasure and pain, they are where? Lost in the buddhi, that we have discussed, in the intellect, in the mind. That happens in the mind, in the intellect. That means the pleasure and pain have the residence in buddhi. Hence bhoga power, which is different from the power of just seeing, enjoying. the power of enjoyment. So bhoga power, the power of objects are available in one and the same intellect. The power of the objects, I gave you the illustration that the grain of sugar is not lost in your intellect. The dharmas, the name, form, utility, value, all these things are lost in your mind. They are already there. So that is the junction. The powers of the enjoyer and the power of the act of enjoyment already included there, and that includes now the objects of enjoyment, sukha, dukkha. This difference happens because when you are knowing, you may know the object as a separate entity. But in case of enjoyment, you cannot enjoy the object keeping it separate from the process of enjoyment. Hence, in the case of enjoyment, all the three together form parts of the action. In many cases of enjoyment, most of the cases of enjoyment. That is why it is generalized here. Or in other words, the ego is the product of an impossible connection between the subject and the inert object, conscious subject and the inert object. These are termed as the seer and the seen, drigdrishya, drashti-drishya. What is this awareness of the individual I or the ego? Let us analyze this point. Due to ajnanam, ignorance, we have two types of confusions which happen simultaneously. Number one, I think that I am the body. And at the same time, number two, I also know that I am the knower of the body. These two things happen simultaneously. The example for the first confusion is that suppose you touch my body. I would say that you touched me. Yes. When you touch my body, I would say that you touched me. So here we got an I that is the body, that is non-different from the body. Then an example for the second experience is I know that I am the knower of the body. For example, I know that my body is tall, short, heavy, light, etc. I know that my body is paining, aching. Here I know the body as different from me. That is why I call it my body. My body. That is why I use the possessive pronoun mine. Therefore, our ego or asmita is the product of both the seer and the seen. This is called samyoga or junction. This junction is the cause, hetuhu, of the things that have to be given up, heyaha, because they bring suffering. Heya hetuhu. So a connection or junction happens, number one, in space, means desha, in time, kala, and also in no space and no time, adesha kala. Now, to consider this connection in space, the examples of a junction or contact in space are seen everywhere, like two persons or two things touching one another. And number two, connection in time, this happens between two things or person. This can happen in time also. But especially when two or more vrittis of the mind appear as one for some time, that happen in time. Number three, the connection beyond time and space. Things beyond time and space may seem to be in contact, like the connection between Purusha and Prakriti. That is the subject matter of our discussion. In the Yoga Sutra itself, it will come later. That how does we get liberation, release from a mistaken connection. And this connection is an impossible connection. And it happens neither in time nor in space. Actually, these two main principles of yoga philosophy, the Purusha and Prakriti, are themselves beyond time and space. They are not subject to space. Some yoga or connection can be real and unreal also. Like for instance, a bird is sitting on a branch of a tree. The connection between the tree and the bird is real. On the other hand, suppose two similar things are placed very close to each other. From a distance, they may appear to be one and the same thing. From a distance. You can see below the microscope, if you see things which seem to be one block, you will find the gaps between things there. To think that there is connection between two things is different from thinking that two things are one and the same. To think that there is connection between two things is different from thinking that two things are one and the same. Clear? When two different things appear to be identical or seem to be one and the same object, then that knowledge is a wrong knowledge. Viparyayaha mithyajnanam atadrupa pratishtham. He has said already, Patanjali. The word samyoga, connection or junction, and the word ekatmata, identity, actually means something like the separate fields surrounding each other and overlapping. A thing called A has its magnetic field, suppose. A field, personal space. Another thing, B has its personal space. They can never come in contact with each other, but their fields can come in contact with each other. That is what is called samyoga. It is something like a personal space, the personal spaces of both overlapping and creating a joint effect. The two separate and different things do not actually join together, but their two fields of influence overlap and create a third entity called the asmita or ego junction. There are wonderful mythological stories in Hindu traditional lore that would show that this ego can be simply ripped apart, because that is a connection between the two fields, can be ripped apart. There are stories like that. A person called Jarasandha was a combination of two parts, and when he was ripped apart, he died. The conscious seer and the unconscious seen objects are two different things. They are opposite and contradictory to each other like light and darkness. Tamaprakasavat viruddha svabhavayoho, Shankaracharya writes. Similarly, the seer and the means and the instruments that are used to see are different. That is why it is wrong to think that they can be thought to be identical. But when we say I know me, then there are two different things. The knower, I, and the knowledge, darshana. In this statement we have used two first person pronouns also. I and me. I know me. Know is the verb. I am knowing me as an object, drishya. All these three appear to be one and the same compound. This knowledge of a connection or samyoga is wrong. When I say I know me, that is wrong. This sentence itself is wrong. The samyoga between a conscious being and a material object is like that, wrong. If I know me, I become both subject and object. That is not possible. The surgeon cannot put his own body under general anesthesia and then operate on himself. Not possible. Therefore, its effect means whatever it will produce, its effect. Whose effect? The effect of a wrong notion, effect of a mistake. This effect means whatever it will produce will also be wrong. And Samyoga, being a wrong knowledge, is the source, hetuhu, of suffering. Hence, this future suffering has to be avoided. Heyam. Future suffering is anagatam dukkham. The lead motivation to reject or not to be curious about this samyoga or connection between the seer and the seen comes from our finding satisfaction in our own self. The self is not the body but residing in it. That sense of self-worth helps us to outgrow or grow beyond our genetic definition or identity. If we are not able to look beyond our genetic definition, then we are always bound by the genetic traits and laws. By definition, our genes, left to themselves, are selfish. Conversely, all selfishness proves how gross is our understanding of ourselves. No spiritual growth or progress is possible if we cannot come out of our genetic limitations. We may sit long hours in meditation, but it will be a futile exercise. That means selfishness is directly contradictory to spiritual growth. This is a huge retarding force acting against our search for a meaning in our perishable biological life, and acting against our effort to look beyond our death. We will learn more about the Samyoga in the following sutras. At first, for the purpose of investigation, the Yoga Sutras takes up the drishya or the objects of the senses that are used by the drashta or seer. Later it will have time to investigate the subject in a special way. We will have occasion to discuss it at that particular time. Hence, we proceed to study the next aphorism. The next aphorism is also an eye-opener. Prakasha kriya sthitishīlam bhūtendriyātmakam bhoga apavargartham drishyam. Prakasha kriya sthitishīlam bhūtendriyātmakam bhoga apavargartham drishyam. The experienced is composed of elements and organs. Experience means the objects. Is of the nature of illumination, action and inertia, and is of the purpose of experience and release of the experiencer. This aphorism explains the nature of the drishya or the objects of seeing or experiencing, or in other words, the sense objects, including our own mind. An object is that which can be known or revealed because there is sattva guna in it, which can be dynamic, changeful because it has rajo guna in it, and it can be static or inert because of the presence of the tamo guna in it. Prakasa kriya sthitishīlam. Sthiti means inertia. The gunas are the constituents of the objects, and the effects of the gunas are the created objects and the sense organs. And again, an object can be of the nature of 5 elements also, both gross and subtle, and also can be of the nature of the sense organs, both subtle and gross. And some of the objects are meant for both. Now comes the real and very important idea here. Some objects are meant for both. Once again I say, for both the bondage and liberation, bhoga apavarga, for the bondage and liberation of the subject called the seer or enjoyer. This idea has been said in the Devi Saptasati. Jnaninam api chetangsi Devi Bhagavati hisa balada krishya mohaya mahamaya prayachati. So even the great intellect of the scholars can be simply twisted into one small lump and thrown into oblivion by the power of these enjoyments, Shakti. And Saisa Prasanna Varada Nrinam Bhagavati Muktai. And when that Shakti, that power is propitious, happy, helpful, then that will be the cause for our liberation. Both can be both cause for liberation and for bondage. Bhoga actually means, as we have already seen, experience of both enjoyments and suffering. Bhoga does not mean only enjoyment. No. We may create a word durbhoga, means suffering. No. Bhoga itself means enjoyment. Enjoyment's experience, both enjoyment and suffering. Further, the aphorism says that the sense objects are the bhoga apavargartham, for the experience of the subject and also for its liberation. Bhoga apavargartham. And this is one of the very challenging topics in spiritual literature. Most of the time we take the world for an hindrance to our liberation, a cause of bondage only. No. This aphorism will explain to us how this world can be both the causes of our bondage and liberation. There is no other way. We cannot lift ourselves up from the world and hang somewhere else to get rid of this world or to get liberation. Every step has to be taken on this earth, on this world. Going out of a forest is through the forest. So, it is both for bondage, bhoga apavargartham drishyam. Patanjali says here, whatever you can experience as gross or subtle, everything is meant for both your enjoyment, both your suffering and bondage and liberation. Both of your bondage and liberation. We will stop here today. We have come to the end of our time. So we will end this session with chanting of Om once. We will continue further with this in the next class. Om